This episode of Test Drive is brought to you by Ash Gregoire, with 32 dealerships across North America and over 3,000 vehicles in stock. So you're in the market for a hot hatchback, a used hot hatchback, and you're curious to know which you should go with. There's a lot of choices out there, Subaru WRX, Volkswagen GTI, but today we're going to be talking about this 2016 Ford Focus ST, because unfortunately Ford killed the Focus a couple years ago, meaning you can only buy these in North America now in the used market. In Europe, you guys have the Mark IV. This is the Mark III. We've done a number of videos on them over the last little while because I am now the owner of a Ford Focus Electric, which I really like. So I wanted to see what the more performance-oriented version had to offer. Now we've got the base MSRP for the Canadian vehicle. I don't quite have the exact number for the US model because the options were slightly different between our two markets. This one comes pretty much fully equipped. There were a couple options you could have added onto it that we don't have here, including a sunroof, navigation, and then there's different rims. Technically, this vehicle came with the upgraded rims, but I guess the previous owner had the old rims as well, or rims maybe from a different version of the ST and put these on. These are sort of the base rims that come with it instead of the upgraded ones that you can get, but I think it's a pretty good look overall. Now, why are you going to be considering the Ford Focus ST? This uses a 2-liter EcoBoost 4-cylinder engine with a nice little turbocharger on it, producing 252 horsepower and 270 pound-feet of torque. Pretty good for a little hot hatchback. Now, we have a couple of packages on here already. As I mentioned, the tires and rims would have been different. They're not on this one, but I'd say the most important one is the Equipment 401A package for our market. That gives you the tech package, along with the 10-speaker Sony audio system, Sirius XM, dual-zone digital automatic climate control, and the carbon fiber interior. So the gear shifter and some of the trim have carbon fiber on it, which I think looks really good. Now here in Canada, we pretty much got the Recaro racing seats as standard, at least as far as I can tell. I know in the States the base ST would have had cloth seats, and then if you went with the ST3 package, it would have added it. But we do have the charcoal black leather Recaro heated front seats on here with driver power. They're very comfortable, even a big guy like me. I know a lot of people said that maybe I wouldn't fit that well in this car because of the seats and because I'm a big guy. No problems whatsoever. But what makes the Ford Focus ST so interesting? Well, aside from that engine, you also get high-performance brake pads on this vehicle. The ST exterior trim differs from the other vehicles sold by Ford, and this also has a good look to it on the front. We also have HID headlights, the ST steering wheel, which is better on this facelift version. I like the steering wheel on this compared to the pre-facelift one. We also have ST scuff plates for the doors and the sport suspension on here. So it performs really well, drives very well, and it gives you a good idea of what this vehicle has to offer in the hot hatchback market. The thing is though, a car like this is always going to be overshadowed by something like the Focus RS. That thing is a bonkers, true track-oriented little hatchback with all-wheel drive, way more power, and costs a whole lot more. I mean, these things go for just under $20,000 Canadian. Original MSRP was $32,000. 5 years later, you're looking at about 20 grand. There's going to be some higher mileage models out there, and they seem to be moderately reliable enough, at least from what I've been able to tell. And then you've got some of the lower mileage examples which go for more. So you're looking between about $15,000 and $25,000 Canadian. But when it comes to the Focus RS, the average selling price right now for those are about $40,000 to $45,000 Canadian. It's crazy how much people want for those, but you do get quite a bit of car. The thing is, I would argue that this ST is going to give you the best daily driving performance that you can get out of the Ford Focus. Now, I haven't driven the RS, so I can't say for sure, but this is very livable on a daily basis, especially if you live somewhere that doesn't get a lot of snow, then you don't really need the all-wheel drive system. We've had a lot of fun driving this over the last couple days. I actually surprised myself because I'm not usually a big fan of manual transmissions. If you know me here on Test Drive, I'm super honest about the things that I do here on Test Drive. There's always like a stigma, or probably the best word to describe it is a stigma, when it comes to automotive journalists or automotive enthusiasts in general. Basically, you have to like a manual transmission or else you're no good. You shouldn't be doing this. You shouldn't be a car enthusiast. But I'll tell you right now, I don't really like driving manual, but I picked this one because I wanted to see what the ST had to offer, and it only comes with the 6-speed manual. So I have no choice but to drive it, and it is enjoyable. We'll talk about it on the road, but if you are sort of newer to driving a manual transmission, this might be a good option to go with because the clutch is very forgiving, very smooth, and very easy for newer drivers to get used to. Now, I did mention there's a couple options on here that we don't have. You could have also had different paint colors on here. Ours is the shadow black, but you could have gotten it also with race stripes, either red or black, depending on which color you went with for the outside. And then there were a couple different trim options for the wheels. Again, ours is so the default ones that you would get on this. But that's about it for the exterior and everything that you need to know about the car when it's stationary. I get support for us to hit the road and talk about how the 2016 Ford Focus ST performs on the road and why you might want to consider it in today's market. All right, my friends, before we really get into the drive of this 2016 Ford Focus ST, I have to thank our friends at Ash Gregoire for letting me feature this vehicle. And if you're in the market for it, whether you want to buy this specific car or any of the over 3,000 vehicles they have in stock at their 32 dealerships across North America, you can visit promo.ashgregoire.com/Nile. That's my name. You'll save $200 off the purchase of your next vehicle with them. And I have to say, this one is pretty nice. They've had a couple of them come up over the years, and they have a wide selection of Ford Focus and other cars as well, so it depends on what you're looking for. But big thanks to them for letting us feature this one, because it's been on my list for a little while. I wanted to get into the white one they had a few months back, but I missed out. It sold too quick because these things are pretty hot. Now, let's talk about the fuel economy. We completed our 100-kilometer test loop in this vehicle. There's no mode. There's no drive modes like you get on the RS. It's just normal mode. We completed it in 7.4 liters per 100 kilometers. Not too bad for a little car, a little hot hatchback like this. For the most part, you know, that's kind of what you'd be looking at in the sportier segment. Because this car isn't new, I'm not going to go into how it compares to other things. And we haven't really driven anything that's super comparable. Yes, the Volkswagen GTI would be pretty close, but that used a 7-speed dual clutch, and it was also brand new. So you can take that information, use it however you will. But I want to talk about the rest of the experience when it comes to this ST, because I have enjoyed driving it. And again, I keep saying this because I'm probably one of the few people who would ever admit this publicly, that I don't drive a lot of manuals, and I just don't like that. I don't hate it. I'm not really part of the kill all manuals movement, but I'm certainly not part of the save all the manuals movement either. They exist. A lot of people like them, that's fine, but for me, it's just not something that I grew up with. So I guess that's one of the reasons why I'm just not super into it. But again, because the ST only comes with a 6-speed manual, this is the way you have to go with it. So if you want to buy this car, you got to live with it. And for 99.99 infinite% of people, it's going to be fine. For the small group of people like me, you know, it's not, again, a problem, but it's just something that I have been getting used to. And again, as somebody who doesn't drive a lot of manuals, I have to say that the clutch on this has been good. The shifting, very smooth. I like it. You know, I'm not super smooth on it, but I'm getting the hang of it. And oh, I think my favorite part is the blow off. I don't know if you can hear it. I'll roll down the window a bit. Oh! Oh, I love it. I don't know if that's stock. That's one of the problems with buying and using a car like this, a used car, and especially one like this, a Ford Focus ST. Chances are there's been a little bit of modification to it, right? I'd be very surprised if this thing was truly bone stock. So I think maybe that blow off isn't original. I'd have to get a new one. I'd have to find one that is, you know, I know for sure hasn't been modified at all. But I really do like it. I think that was the big little surprise for me when I first picked this up and I was driving. I'm driving along and I hear whoosh. I'm like, whoa, buddy! That's what I'm talking about. I just love it. So that goes easy if you're using the gauges in the center there. You can see once the boost gets to about 1 bar, about halfway, you get the blow off. It sounds great. So I like it. Oh, and you can hear it there too. It's just so good. Now, a couple things to note if you're driving this. If you're like me, right, I never drove one of these before. Like some manuals, if you're putting it into reverse, there's a little disc that goes on the bottom, like a little ring around the gear shifter. You actually pull it up when you're neutral and put it into the reverse gear. I'll admit I had to Google that when I got into the car because, you know, for the most part, the manuals that I drive usually just punch it over or push down and pull over, so it's a little different if you're driving it for the first time. Keep that in mind. You don't have to go and Google it. I've done that for you. But like I said, it's a very smooth transmission, very nice clutch for somebody like me enjoying it. And then the performance on this is good too. Yeah, I found that it's exactly what I said outside, a good daily driver. If you want to have something that's fun, enjoyable, not going to cost too much for gas, keep in mind about 252 horsepower. It's pretty good overall for power to weight ratio and everything. So you're getting a pretty good little car that's not going to eat up gas. And as far as I can tell, you don't need premium. The gas cap at least doesn't say it, and because we're in Quebec here, the owner's manual is obviously completely in French, so I'm not reading through that. But if you get regular gas on this, not bad at all. I like it. Honestly, the thing is, when it comes between this and the electric that I bought, pricing is pretty similar. Do I regret buying the electric? Absolutely not. But it gives you an idea of what you kind of get for about the same price. And I have to say that, I'd say that this is worth about that $18,000 price point. In today's market, you're getting quite a bit of car. There's not really a lot of features with it. I suppose that's one of the reasons why Ford killed off the Mark III Focus, because there's no enhanced safety tech. I mean, we've got cruise control. That's kind of it. You've got a nice backup camera. So, it's kind of the end of the list of safety features on here, right? Whereas, I guess if we got the Mark IV, we would have had a little bit more safety tech. Some of the things that we see on something like the Ford Fusion, that probably would have trickled down. So you're not getting, enhanced safety tech on this, but you're getting a nice experience. You're getting a good ride, and you are getting into a community that has a lot of really serious and loyal enthusiasts. I brought this by our local Ford dealership in town, and it's a Ford Focus ST, right? It's not like a rare car. It's not like a Ford GT, but they were very excited to see it because they are cool. They are cool cars, and there's a really cool and deep community around these of people who really like them. And they produced them for a number of years, and if you had the first generation SVT, you're part of that community too. And then if you get the big boy RS, and you're kind of like the king daddy of all Ford Focuses. But I gotta say that for daily driving, good stuff overall. I'm very, very happy with this. Definitely enjoyed my week. I'm glad that I went out of my comfort zone to be able to drive this vehicle, because again, I probably would have skipped it normally, but I really did want to see what this had to offer, because I missed out on them on the press fleet when they had them new. This is the best opportunity I have to drive it, and I am not disappointed at all. It is a nice little ride here, and I can definitely see why they're popular. No performance driving for me here, but I'll give you a little bit of a rip. Oh, the blow off is so good. Oh, I love it. I think that's my favorite part of this whole car, is just that blow off. So good. But that's about it. That's the drive. It's very similar to the other Ford Focuses that we've driven in this generation, so there's nothing to surprise. The performance is good. I think we need to go back to the studio now. I want to talk about some of the things to look out for if you're in the market for a Ford Focus ST, and some of the common problems or common things to look out for to be better prepared. If you are going to pull the trigger on one, you want to make sure you're buying one that's going to last you. You're going to have a good experience with it. So let's see what to look out for. All right, so we've taken the 2016 Ford Focus ST on the road. We talked about the features and tech and everything that you would want to know if you're in the market for it. But now it's time to talk about our buyer's guide, going over the things that you should look out for if you're in the market for one of these cars. There aren't tons of issues with this. And the great thing about vehicles like this, sort of the performance-oriented cars, is there's a lot of information out there online, a lot of enthusiast groups, whether it's on Facebook or dedicated forums like FordFocusST.com. Now, there's a couple things that I found. The high-pressure fuel pump can have failures. Seems to be about 40 to 60,000 miles, so you'd be looking at almost 100,000 kilometers or so. This one, so far so good at about 81,000 kilometers, but keep that in mind. Owners have reported that over the years. It seems to be somewhat common, but it's a pretty simple fix from what I've been able to read. Also, the early models can have issues with gear synchro failure, and that seems to be with the second gear for the most part, and it seems to have been fixed by 2015 plus. It's really just the early ST models that had those issues. This one should be fine. The front lower control arms seem to be a problem too, both sides. I've seen again some information about that online, talking about those have failed a little bit prematurely. Again, it's more of a performance-oriented car. It's front-wheel drive. There's weight on the front, so keep that in mind when you take it in to have it looked at. Now, the last thing is not necessarily a common problem, but it's something that I have found as a consistent when looking at this car. It is recommended that if you're in 6th gear, so you're on the highway, do not, under any circumstance, do wide open throttle or floor it in 6th. If you're trying to pass somebody and you're under 2,500 RPM, especially in this sweet spot of about 2,000 to 2,500, you gotta shift down. Apparently, the engine will explode. And it's not just one or two people. I mean, that seems to be pretty consistent across the board from what I've read on the Ford Focus ST stuff. So if you're passing somebody, shift down to 4th, say, get going, and you don't have to worry about too many issues there. So that's something else. It's not really a common problem, but just something to keep in mind. And aside from that, I mean, from what I've been able to tell, the key is to have the car stock. It's going to be the best for long-term reliability. The reality is, though, a car like this is going to be modified. It's hard not to. I mean, a lot of the sport-oriented, performance-oriented cars, there's always more potential out of it, whether it's an engine tune, exhaust, lowering kits, all sorts of things. There's a ton of things that you can do with a Ford Focus ST. You take it away from stock, you're adding in new, not issues, but new complications into the car. So keep it in mind, if you're looking for a car like this, if you're like me, I would want to keep it stock. I'm not going to be modifying it, but try to find one that is stock, or at least has been returned to stock is going to be better. You know, you never quite know what kind of modifications have been done and who's done them. So keep that in mind when you're looking for these cars. We always recommend you go and take this to a trusted mechanic before making any purchase decisions. I mean, again, Ford Focus was a pretty popular car here in North America, so being able to find somebody to be able to work on it should not be an issue. So take a look at that. Take a look for rust issues as well. Some of the common areas to look out for rust on the 3rd generation Ford Focus. The trunk, if you open up the trunk, the lift gate along the bottom lip, you could see some rust developing there. It's almost like the drain plugs don't quite work properly. Rear fenders as well can develop some rust there. And then unfortunately, again, because it's more of a sport-oriented, performance-oriented car, these are probably driven a little harder, meaning they might be driven a little faster or on the track, things like that. So you might find that the front end is a little chipped up, stone chips, things like that. You know, even the headlights on this have a little bit of stone pitting on it. So it's impossible to really avoid that unless it's garage kept. But considering this has 81,000 kilometers on it, it's in great shape. And again, from what I've read online, they're pretty reliable overall, especially if you keep it stock. If you have any questions about this Ford Focus ST, please leave a comment below. I had this car for a week, and now as a Ford Focus enthusiast, I have access to my own car. Slightly different, but I can give you some information about it in general. I also would ask you to give a thumbs up to the video if you liked it, and consider subscribing to our channel if you haven't done so already. Thanks for watching, and until next time, take care.